Welcome to episode 3 of our Smash series. And in this episode, we're going to be really focusing on angle and accuracy.
When it comes to the smash, I think everyone gets a bit obsessed with how hard you can hit it. But if you can get good accuracy and good angle in your smash, it's going to be really effective.
So David, because your lack of height, you're going to be covering the accuracy side?
Yeah, so I mean, accuracy is a really important part of your smash, whether you're singles, doubles, mixed. And it's not just about how close to the line you can hit it, it's actually about where you can hit it in relation to someone's body as well. So we're going to focus on 2 areas, and area number 1 is going to be our racket head control. And this is, if we think about when we're coming through on our swing, we want to be able to square that racket face up, Dean, as consistently as possible. I think what we tend to see with people who are struggling with their smash, they actually come in with a slight angled face, maybe creating some slice, or it's even pushing out one way, and that's why they're consistently missing.
And I guess they just talk about accuracy there. It's key to understand why something is happening. So if it is someone that does leak out to the side, but they have an understanding of, well, you're either coming in that direction with your racket as you're swinging through, or you're over-rotating, just as you mentioned.
Precisely, and a nice little kind of trick you can do to work this out is just grab 10 shuttles, hit 10 smashes aiming straight down the line, and just have a look at where you're typically hitting the shuttle. If it's to one side, that's because that face is coming in that way, and then vice versa.
So what can we do to work on this accuracy?
Well, a nice little drill I like to do is actually starting at a slower speed with your swing, maybe 25%. And just hit 10 shuttles down the line, really focusing on getting that racket face square. When you've done 10 and you're feeling happy with that, start to speed up, maybe 50%, and then so on, making sure we're only moving on to that sort of next speed when we're confident that shuttle's coming out straight where we're aiming.
It's probably worth bringing up something that we talked about in episode 1, and that's that forehand grip. Because what we want to make sure is, even though people work on accuracy, that we don't kind of suddenly keep this face square the whole way. We don't want to feel like we're cheating. We want to feel like we're getting that forehand grip, and we're working on that rotation of the forearm and start to understand how much we need to rotate to get that racket head pointing straight. So we've covered the racket when talking about accuracy, but David, I know you're keen to bring in the body into this conversation as well.
Yeah, and the body is probably the biggest overlooked one. I think everyone instantly goes to the racket. Why am I hitting this out? When actually what we're doing with our upper body is so important. And the reason we're on this round the head side, Dean, is this is probably the most common one we see, is when we're coming round the head, our body is leaning away constantly from that shuttle, and we end up dragging that shuttle down. But it's the same when you're in a good position, when we're coming through, letting this chest drop too much, or just being slightly too off balance.
And would you say some of this is associated to people wanting to hit hard and power, that they're trying to hit so hard that they're losing control of their body?
Precisely. We need to have that good core control to be able to keep our body in a good position so that we can then maintain that racket face position. So it all links together, so we've got to be in control.
So David, obviously sometimes in the rear court you are going to be leaning across, particularly in this round the head corner. So what do we need to be thinking about in the way of how our racket moves through the shot and how we adjust our body after making contact?
Yeah, like when we're coming around here, we can hit some good smashes from this angle when my body's slightly leaning, but my racket adjusts for that, and so I can get that consistent racket face coming through. And the important thing here is I'm not hitting and just letting my body collapse. I am still within a range of control here that is then really, really important. And sort of like we mentioned earlier, Dean, if you are slightly leaning off balance, you're not going to try and hit as hard as you can, because that's going to further bring you off balance. You're going to hit within a range where you can keep your body still in a relatively strong position.
Obviously, you mentioned the fact that it may take you further off balance there, adding power. But also, if that shuttle does come back, it doesn't come back faster. So we also give ourselves less time to recover.
Precisely.
So if you want to go away and work on this area, what we suggest is having a feeder lifting different heights of lift to one corner whilst moving from the middle. This will give you a clear understanding of what body position you're going to be in and how you can adjust to hit good, accurate smashes.
So we've covered accuracy now, and now we're going to move on to angle, Dean. Where should we start?
Well, I think the most important aspect to talk about with angle is contact point. And sometimes a common problem we see is people still trying to hit hard but hitting too low. We have to make use of the length of our arm and the length of the racket. So we're looking for our contact point to be as high as we possibly can whilst the angle of the racket is then pointing in a downwards direction for the smash.
And it's quite important there for us then to be in a good position when we're doing this, so we can get that contact point in front of us.
As much as we can be, because we still have to think about the fact that there might be some flatter lifts and we might be caught off balance. So it comes back to as early as you possibly can, based on the situation that you are in.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting that you brought in the kind of flatter lifts. And I think a lot of the time we see people maybe doing this jump out that we're going to come on to and hitting flat smashes. It's because their swings then not adjusting to that. Whereas if we've got a little less time, we have to use a shorter, snappier swing to then still get that angle, so we're contacting that shuttle as high as possible.
And it's a very common play from the other side, almost hitting that flat lift to tease people to get up and hit hard, knowing it can't come as steep, and then they actually turn the defence a lot easier. And you're right, it's avoiding that tease.
So I know, Dean, we wanted to cover that area first because that's an important one for everyone. We're going to move on to the jump, but that's a slightly more advanced technique.
I think it just depends on who you are as a player, and we want this video to help all ages, all abilities. And actually, if we go back to contact point, that's going to help everyone. If it's that we want to add the jump, of course, that's going to help more angle, but some people may not be able to do that anymore physically.
So the jump. I know there's two different types, Dean.
It very much depends on the lift and the position that you are in. So we've probably got the jump out of both sides, where we feel like we're kind of almost jumping up and backwards, and then kind of almost the static jump, where we feel like we've got a little bit more time to set, get behind the shuttle, and this is going to feel much more of a kind of jump up and forwards.
Yeah. So when it comes to the jump smash, one of the big mistakes we see, Dean, is timing. What goes on there?
I think it's almost people maybe not used to the height of their jump or taking into effect the different trajectory of the lift. And it is one of those ones, it's as simple as it just needs that repetition in practice. Like, how high can we jump? When do we kind of bend down to take off? And the more we practice that in training, the more we feel like we'd be comfortable with it in a match play situation.
And a nice thing you can do is actually video yourself doing it, slow it down and look at where you're contacting that shuttle. I know we've done it with players before where they're almost touching the floor again on their jump when they go to contact the shuttle. So have a look at that. Are you getting it at its highest point? Now, another common mistake we see when people are doing jumps is this jump out, Dean, and they're choosing maybe to force the kick through a bit.
I think that their main emphasis comes almost back to power. So they're aware that body rotation creates more power. But what we then see is, because it's a flatter lift, they actually end up off balance. So they're almost taken off backwards and trying to kick through. Yeah. Actually, everything's then, as you mentioned earlier, David, the body's going in the wrong direction for us to feel like we're pushing back into court. So on that flatter lift, we're very much looking for that kind of jump out, where we might not get that rotation as much with the body, but we kind of benefit with a much more solid landing that enables us to then spring back into court.
And a nice little drill we can do to work on this is just getting our partner to lift different heights of lifts into this corner and testing where we almost finish after our kick through or our jump out, and whether it's in a good position. And you can sort of test your extremities of which one you should use. So we hope you enjoyed this episode on accuracy and angle.
And make sure you keep a lookout for episode 4, which will be focused on the tactical use of the smash in singles.